Hello, my name is Nick Dodds. I'm a Star Scout from Troop 575, and today I'm going to show you how to tie 3 important lashings. The first lashing that we're going to learn how to tie today is the shear lashing. So the shear lashing is tying 2 poles or 2 staves together, which is why I have 2 staves here today. Now the start of every good lashing starts with a clove hitch. Now if you don't know how to tie clove hitch, I made a video on 4 very important knots that every scout should know. Now here's where the shear lashing starts to really take its shape. You want to take the working end, which is this, and you want to wrap it very tightly around both of the staves. So continue this wrapping until you've gone almost to the end of one of the poles if you're tying a flagpole, but if you're tying 2 together like this, just go until you're almost at the end or you're just out of rope, and make sure it's tight. And another thing, while you're wrapping, you don't want any space between your wraps, because once again it's not as tight and you lose a lot of strength if you don't wrap it evenly like I did. So after you feel you've done enough wrapping, this is the frapping phase, and all frapping is putting the rope in between the 2 poles, going above it and then coming back through under it. Once again, you want to make sure it's tight while you're doing it. So after you're finished frapping, you want to end off the shear lashing with a clove hitch. Once again, if you don't know what a clove hitch is, you can watch my other video on the 4 scout knots everybody should know. So when you're done tying the clove hitch, this is what the finished product of the shear lashing should look like. You want all of the rounds you made around the 2 poles to be touching each other. You don't want any overlapping, and you don't want any spaces. And when you end off, when you start, you want 1 clove hitch on 1 pole, and then when you end, you want another clove hitch on the other. So that is how you tie the shear lashing. So the second lashing that we're going to tie today is the diagonal lashing. Now the diagonal lashing is tying 2 staves together, but to make it easier, I'm going to be using 2 pieces of PVC pipe. Now to compare it to the square lashing, when you make the square lashing, all of the weight is being put onto this stave, or in my case PVC pipe. All the weight is being put on to this. But with the diagonal lashing, you're making an X, and all of the weight, say you're building a structure, all of the weight is being put on the ends of the stave or PVC pipe, and if it was made correctly, then instead of it collapsing, it might give a little bit, but it will stop the structure from falling completely and will hold. And that is the use of the diagonal lashing. So in order to start the diagonal lashing, you want to start by tying a timber hitch. And again, if you don't know how to tie the timber hitch, this is basically a follow-up video to show how the knots are used in my 4 very important knots that every scout should know video. So go watch that to learn how to tie this knot. Once you have the staves crossed, you want to take the working end of the rope and you want to bring it under this pipe or stave and then cross it over like that. Now you want to do this 3 times before you can move on to the next step. Also remember, as you're lashing, you want to make sure that they don't overlap and they're very close together. So just remember that. Also, make sure they're tight too. So once you have all 3 lashes on this side done, you want to do it to the other side. So bring it around bring it around this stave, and then cross over onto that side. Like the other one, you want to lash this 3 times before you can move on to the next step. Once you've finished wrapping this 3 times, this is the frapping phase. Like I said earlier, frapping is just wrapping the rope around the lashing you made. Frap that 2 or 3 times at least, and then you can move on to the next step. So once you're fully frapped, then the next step is very simple because it's no lashing. It's just tying a clove hitch. Like I said, watch my other video to learn how to tie the clove hitch. So after you've done your clove hitch, this is what the final product should look like. This is going to hold really, really well if you did it correctly. And in review, you want to start with the timber hitch because it's a very strong knot. Then you want to lash 3 times on one side, wrap around 3 times on the other side, frap, and then tie off using the clove hitch. And that's how you tie the diagonal lashing. The third and final lashing I'm going to teach you how to tie today is the tripod lashing. Now, if you don't know what a tripod is, it's just something with 3 legs, which is why I have 3 staves to demonstrate how to tie it today. The tripod lashing, what I most use it for is the finished product. I hang a lantern from in between the 3, and or you can make 2 tripods and hang something between the 2 of them. That's just another option, but like I said, what I normally do is put a lantern in between all 3. Now the first step to the tripod lashing is making a clove hitch. Now when making the clove hitch, leave a little bit of extra slack on, and I'll get to that in a second. Now what you want to do is you want to take the working end and you want to wrap it around until there's no rope left from what was left of the standing end. Now that you have the poles positioned in this way, and you have the twirled working and standing end, you want to take this and put it in between these poles, and this is going to get the tripod lashing started. Once this is wrapped, you're going to have a little left over of the twirled end, but that's okay. I'm not going to use it anyway. So, normally you would do this while laying down the staves, but I can't do that, so I'm going to tell you how to do it. So once you have all the top parts connected, we're going to start with the actual lashing part. At the bottom, you want to go over the first stave, under the second, and then over the third. And when you go back, you want to do the exact opposite. You want to go under the first, over the second, and under the third. Now this is very rough. What you would do if you were doing a tripod lashing is you would push all of the lashing you made up to the top to make it tight, and lashing needs to be tight, otherwise it won't work like it's intended. So once you do it till you have no rope or you feel that you've done enough lashing, you can go on to the next step. Alright, once you're to the point where I am, where you've done a lot of lashing, it's time for the frapping part. And the frapping goes in between the middle one and the outside ones. And what the frapping does is it separates the rope and it separates the staves from touching each other, so the tripod works better. So once you're done with the frapping, you've wrapped it 2 or 3 times on each, you end it with the clove hitch. Once you've tied off the clove hitch, your tripod should be finished. And Going back over, you start with the clove hitch with a little extra slack on it, so you can wrap it around to begin. Then you wrap it in and out of the bottom part of the staves. Push them up, make sure they're tight. When you feel you've done enough, you frap the middle so it creates space to make the tripod more effective. After that, you tie your clove hitch and then you're finished. And that is how you tie the tripod lashing. Once again, my name is Nick Dodds, and thank you for watching how to tie 3 important lashings that every scout should know.